Hello, welcome back to the Cricket Draft Show. The Big Bash is live. The game is live. My name is Dan and I am your host, and I'm joined by our game expert, Chris Dixon, with a bit of analytics going on as well, and our analyst, Dan Weston. Well, it's been a good start, roughly, hasn't it, chaps? I think we've done pretty well so far. I have got rankings and I've got points as to where we are in our little league of three, because we need to know who's doing the best out of all of it. Might not come as a huge surprise, and you can tell by the smile on his face, but Chris is currently sat in first place with 848 points. Dan, you're in second with 799, and I'm just clinging on to you with 796. So actually, for the three of us, pretty close so far. Global rankings, though, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. There's a little bit more space. Chris, you're currently just outside the top 100, 110th in the world at the moment, which could be a personal insult to you. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I reckon there's scope. There's scope. Dan, you're 152nd, and I'm 4 places behind you in 156th. So, yeah, I've got a little bit of catching up to do. But Dan Weston, we'll start with you. How's your first week been as an official cricket draft player? And are your models and all of your spreadsheets, are they lining up with how you'd expect your team and your points to be performing at the moment?
Oh, it's been a fantastic week, Dan. First of all, also the real highlight was actually finding out Chris's team because of how cagey he was in the last episode. But no, I've been really enjoying it. Actually, I've been checking the app to see the points for each player and checking our little mini league of 3, and I did have a nice little lead until today, and the stars players let me down quite considerably. Captain Curran has not earned me points today, but he did a good job in the first game of this game week, so I can't complain too much. Yes, I know I've been absolutely loving it, and long may it continue.
And how about your team? How are you finding their performance based on this week? Are you happy with your initial selection, or are you thinking you've made a couple of mistakes so far?
No, I'm pretty cool with it all, really. I think that ultimately all I can do is pick a team with the information I've got at hand before the matches take place. I'm pleased because I think you boys both had Jafer Chohan who didn't play, so I've had no non-contributors, so that's a start. I think you said just under 800, right? And I've got it modelled out at being 867 would be the average performance for this team over this game week against average opposition. So with Chris Jordan still to come in and play tomorrow, I've got the scope to potentially get up to that type of level. So yeah, pretty much in line with the expectations.
I'm really quite satisfied the fact that the model is coming out as close to the actual kind of return. It just makes you feel a bit warm inside, doesn't it, when things like that actually work? Chris, your team is now available to the public, sir. So thank you to the Cricket Draft for allowing us to kind of see that information. How about you? How's that first game week been for you? Is it as you expected, or are you a little bit disappointed with what you've got so far?
It's okay. It's early days, and I'd like to think over the course of the competition I can maybe climb a bit more. But early on is there's much to play with, and much kind of more volatility in 1 week. No one can do well, no one can do badly. Over the course of the season is where if you put the effort in, you can see the rewards of that. I'm not too disappointed so far. I also had Tom Curran, who he did well in the first game, not so well in the second game, and Stoinis kind of the other way around. He bowled his 4 overs in the second game, as we wondered, I wondered in the first game why he didn't bowl at all, and now we're bowling, so not too disheartened there. And then also Jafer Chohan, quite surprised he didn't play. To sign an overseas player and not play him, he was in the squad, so I don't exactly know if there's a specific reason. Maybe it was just down to selection on the day. So quite surprised he didn't play. So had a few that didn't play. I had Darcy Short in as well, who didn't play for the Adelaide Strikers, so there's potentially that kind of gears to where my chances are going to go from here, because I don't want to be wasting money on players that aren't playing unless they're really cheap. But on the whole, I'm not too disappointed, and looking forward to the rest of the game.
Am I allowed to ask you about transfers, or are they top secret as well?
Oh, I don't know at this stage. It's too early. I tend to leave them towards the last minute. Look ahead to the game week. Look at things like weather and double game weeks, and who's playing, who's not, who's batting where, who's bowling where. I've decided then. So yeah, I don't actually know yet. So
That's fine. That's
again, we're
fine.
not missing again.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit, I was really shocked with Chohan not playing. I think both of us were, well, all three of us, to be fair, were really excited about the prospect of him in the Big Bash, and not a lot of it made much sense to me. The fact that the Sixers didn't play one of their overseas, whether it was a matchup, whether it was kind of a last minute injury or anything like that that may have just kind of kept him out, but it certainly left me with a bit of a head scratching kind of thing going into game week 2. And also the fact that he hasn't played, and potentially my short-sightedness, that unless kind of Bean plays for the Hurricanes tomorrow, then I've played this week with 10 players because I haven't quite got my bench right to come in and fill that gap, which is a shame. I tried to be a little bit clever, and I don't know whether anybody picked up on it or not, but I tried to look ahead to game week 2 with the Scorchers and the Strikers having a double game week. So I bought in Chris Lynn, AJ Ty, and Matty Hurst, thinking, well, if I can bring in guys that are going to play 2 game weeks next week, then I won't have to use too many substitutes going forward. And at one point, AJ Ty was sat there on 75 points, and I was quite happy with the decision. Then he finished with 20. Matt Hurst didn't score many runs, and Chris Lynn didn't do very well either. So it turns out it may have been a slight mistake on my part, but I've still got Shy Hope to play for. If he's anything like Jafer Chohan that I've really hyped up for the BBL, he probably won't get picked anyway, and I'll be sat where I am for game week 2. But it's been a really, really good start to the competition. And I think generally speaking, I think the three of us should be pretty happy with ourselves, the fact that we're sat where we are from 110th through to 156th. And I'm learning a lot from you blokes, which is massively helpful. Going into game week 2, though, now this is the big kind of talking point. We're going to talk to Dan about players to watch. We're going to talk to Chris about tactics, and with the double game weeks and the Googlies and all these other things. We do have 3 England players to throw into the mix for game week 2, which, as a pair of it, or a trio of English cricket fans and a lot of English cricket fans playing the cricket draft game, we've got Jacob Bethell, Ben Duckett and Ollie Pope all heading from New Zealand to Australia to meet up with their teams in the Big Bash. Dan, what players are you looking for? Or who are you looking ahead to in game week 2 with your model that you've set up? Is it too early to start looking at form as well? But which players are you excited for game week 2?
Yeah, I think at this point in time, Dan, it's a bit early to think about form, and probably still a touch early to make opponent-based selections as well, if that makes sense. I like, thinking about who might be playing against weaker opposition in this week, for example. A little bit early for that. I think primarily you're going to be looking at the teams with the double game week, Strikers and the Scorchers. And which players are going to be coming in and out of the teams over the second game week. So, for example, in Melbourne Renegades, Jacob Bethell will probably come in for Hassan Khan. Now, Hassan Khan actually bowled 3 overs in that first game that they were defeated by decision 6s in. So there's potentially scope for Beth to be that second spinner in the Melbourne Renegades team behind Adam Zampa. So there's no real obvious other spin contributors from that first game in their 11. So he might get some bowling points as well, which is something to bear in mind. And obviously, Electric in the field will pick up above average points as a fielder as well. So yeah, just looking at those game week 2 double game week players would be my focus probably.
Yeah, Chris, do you echo those thoughts with the double game week players? Is it worth taking a minus 75 points to bring in another one of these players? Obviously, you're only allowed 2 free transfers in the week, and anything more than that costs you 75 points off your total. Is it worth that kind of decision yet?
I generally prefer not to. I try to kind of look at what I've got and get the core of my team sorted, and only if I see there's a really obvious player, or I'm so restrained by the current squad I have that I feel the need to make drastic changes and make them more than 2 transfers, would I consider that. I think it's more a case of, especially this early on, getting the core of my team sorted, seeing which roles these players are having. You're not, before the tournament starts, you're not sure where everyone's going to bat, how many overs they're going to bowl, which players are going to start. So I don't want too many non-starters, because obviously, as you found out, it becomes a bit tricky if you can't fill the team out. So trying to get that balance right, and then once I get the core settled and I see the kind of roles that the players are having, then I'll kind of look further ahead and start to plan towards those double game weeks and be a bit more tactical in my transfers on a week by week basis to cover that.
And how about Googlies as well? I had a look through 3 of the top 5 players in the total, the overall rankings for the cricket draft has all used 12th player already in week 1. I think Jamie Overton was, if I just check my notes, Jamie Overton was used once as a 12th player, returned 117 points for the strikers. And then Sam Constas was used twice for the player in 2nd, Callum, and Dwayne in 4th, who returned 181 points. No double captains used just yet in that top 5. I'm sure somebody in the cricket draft has. Is it a risk to use them so early? Are you waiting for, like Dan's kind of suggested there, it's too early to look at form, it's too early to look at opponent-based matchups. Are you waiting for the tournament to develop before then you start to use those Googlies?
That's also my preference, especially with the 12th man. I think it's really risky playing that the first week because your highest scoring player on the bench is going to get points, and you're potentially in a situation where lots of players are not potentially even going to play in that first week and you're not sure of their role. So, for example, if you'd played the 12th man this game week, you wouldn't have had any bit of benefit at all and it would have been wasted. So I'd rather wait until I've got the core settled and I'm confident that I've got at least 13 or 14 of my 15 maybe regular starters, and then that gives a bit more scope to maybe benefit a bit more from that. As for the double captain, it's maybe less of a risk playing early on, but I'd still kind of like to see players' roles first in the teams, and then I'd probably look for a week where 2 of the strongest players have a double game week and try and use it then. We also got to be very careful of things like weather, so you want to be checking the weather for the games ahead, which can come into play, which is something maybe some players don't always remember to check. It's quite easy to forget to check things like that. Can be quite a problem. But yeah, I'd generally look to play it a bit later on when I'm a bit more sure of using it, and you can use it early on. It's a bit of a risk, but I certainly prefer to wait a bit longer, especially for the 12th man. I think that's more important to have a settled squad.
Yeah, I mean, checking the weather is a whole nother level to fantasy sports that some people may or may not buy into. Dan, these Googlies that are available for players, are they at all possible to be factored into your models and algorithms, or is that something now that you've got 2 other, well, I suppose not spanners, they're positives really, but 2 other things to potentially consider and think about, or is it quite an easy thing to factor in?
Yeah, I don't think they're problems. I think they are kind of factors that throw the models into being a bit more in demand in certain areas. So, for example, I mean, Chris, I think is elaborated really well on them, and I would echo those kind of general thoughts. But I would be primarily probably looking at if I was to do like a model expectation for a player against a certain opposition, and then the opposition was the weakest team in the league by a long way, and that's when I might think about double captain or something like that. As opposed to 12th man, I'm definitely not in a position to look at that at the moment. I've got the bare 11 at the moment. My subs haven't played a minute, so yeah, that's something that I definitely recommend waiting until the future, as Chris said. I do.
And has anybody got a player at the minute that you're already kind of ready to wield the axe on? I know, Chris, you said you were going to wait and you were going to leave it last minute, but is anybody so far from the games that we have had, and Dan as well, anybody that you're thinking, absolutely not, they've got to go, I've got to try and find somebody else? Because I'll go first. I'm quite happy to go first. Obviously, Laurie Evans has got another game tomorrow, but that'll be the end of the double game week for the Renegades. Didn't go particularly well for him in that opening game. But I feel like if I can remove him and potentially bring in another player who's got a double game week this week, or potentially a double game week the week afterwards, would be someone that I would look to kind of replace.
For me, it's probably a case of taking out the high value players that aren't playing. So, which in my case is Jafer, Chohan, and Darcy Shaw. I don't want to be wasting funds on players that aren't playing. I'm slightly less bothered by those on my bench if they're maybe 4 million and not playing. I've just got 1 or 2. I'm less bothered. Long term, I may look to get him out, but short term, it's not a problem. But if I'm wasting 7 million on someone that's not playing, I need to get that out and get someone in that's going to, hopefully contribute more towards my team. So, yeah, for me, it's a case of those 2 out. Not really sure who in yet. I'll wait to see for that, but it's probably going to be those 2 out at this stage.
Yeah, and as for me, probably looking to ease out the players who are not going to have long-term availability would be my thing. So, for example, I've got Joe Clark, and he's going to be replaced by Ben Duckett for game week 2, I believe. And Adam Milne's a short-term addition to the Stars squad at this stage of the tournament, and with this Mir coming in. So probably looking to ease out some Stars players who obviously have started the tournament with 2 losses and have got some sort of short-term availability stuff going on. So yeah, probably get rid of a couple of those and bring in 2 players who have got double game week or something like that.
Fantastic. Well, chaps, thank you for your time. It's been great as always. That is the end of this week's episode of the Cricket Draft Show. I've got a bit of work to do. It sounds like Chris and Dan have as well. But I obviously have the benefit of learning from the 2 kind of oracles here, which I hope the people watching the content have learnt a few things as well. Good luck in game week 2 to those that are watching, and good luck to the both of you as well. It's been a positive start, and I'm excited to see where the 3 of our teams end up as this game just continues to develop. But look, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.